Hello, my name is Ray Kruse, and I'm your Food Systems Program Coordinator at the Dubuque County Extension Office in Dubuque, Iowa. And my job is to educate the residents of Dubuque County about growing plants and also serve as a resource for anybody that might have a question about growing plants or maybe even some household bugs. And I also help a little bit with trees and shrubs and all kinds of stuff related to plants. So today we are going to be doing a virtual program with the James Kennedy Public Library on growing onions and cabbages at home. So hope that you can follow along and enjoy the show. And we're back. So as a participant of the James Kennedy Public Library program, they have supplied you with a kit, a curbside pickup kit. And some of these materials have been donated by FarmTech. So we're going to start off with a few of those items first. And that would be the plug tray. So this is technically it was a 48 cell plug tray. And it was cut in half to be able to share this program with a few more people. And with that plug tray, we also have this netted tray. And this netted tray just simply serves as a transport vehicle for your plug tray that easily rips apart when it's ready to, or when it's time to plant your transplants out in the garden. So this plug tray here is an awesome size for home gardeners because these individual cells are perfect to be growing your transplants from seed all the way until transplant size out in the garden. So this is what you'll be planting into your cabbages and onions. The next thing that you will receive in your kit is a bag of soil. And this soil here is actually not soil itself. It's something called a potting mix. And this potting mix is a very fine material. And it's composed of sphagnum peat moss, a little bit of perlite, maybe some bark, and maybe some compost in there. And this very fine material tucks our small itty-bitty seeded vegetables that we're going to be planting in it. It tucks them into bed. And being that it kind of hugs those individual seeds as they're planted into it, it offers what we call seed-to-soil contact. And that seed-to-soil contact is what gives us the ability to transfer water into the seed so that the seed can grow into our onion or cabbage that we're planting. So you just so you know, this is not garden soil or topsoil that you would find outside in your garden. The reason why is because that is not even close to what this is. This is a plant-based material. In the garden, it's a mineral-based material, and if you were to bring that inside in a container environment, it performs completely different than what it does out in the garden. So out in the garden, it supplies nutrients, provides the moisture, and things like that. But if you bring it inside, it turns into a brick, and it does not provide the necessary benefits that we would see outside. So this is what we use in an indoor environment. So you will receive, there should be enough to fill all of your individual cells here with potting mix. The next thing that you're going to get in your kit is a small little envelope of cabbage and onions. And the library has done just an awesome job of making these little seed packets so that the seeds don't fall out between the cracks of the envelope and things like that. But in there you can see these are our cabbage seeds here. And they're little round little seeds, and they like to roll away, so be careful when seeding them. But there are different kinds of cabbages, and also onions too, and I'll show you a picture of the onions here. So in there, they don't roll away as well. But there are different kinds of onions and cabbage and different kinds of plants in general. And when they're a cultivated plant, such as cabbages or onions or something like that, we call it a cultivar, which is a cultivated variety. And the cultivar of onions and cabbage that we have picked out for you is the onions are a cultivar called Patterson. And I have that here on the marking stick right here. Patterson onions are what we call a short season onion, so they grow relatively fast. They may not give us the biggest onion in the world, but they grow really fast. And why that's beneficial for a beginning gardener is because it offers less time for our plants to be out in the garden exposed to hungry insects and diseases that might find our onions tasty. So this works out well in hoping that you get a crop, and being it's spent less time outside, it probably is going to look just a little bit better as well. So that's the Patterson onion. This onion is also a long day onion, so it's a short season, but what we call long day. So onions, before they bulb, they have to reach a certain length of day. And up here in the north, in Dubuque County, we have what they call long days, and we require long day onions to be planted in order for them to get them to bulb. And so these Patterson onions are a long day onion. So when we reach those days in June, when the days are really long, closer to 14, 16 hours a piece, it triggers these onions to say, you know what, it's time to start making an onion and not being a plant anymore. If we had planted a short day onion, which is what they plant in the South, our onions would bulb a lot sooner in the year, but they would be very small onions. And so that's why we plant the long day onions, because they do a better job of giving us an actual onion. So those are the Patterson onions. And for the cabbages. So the cabbages that we have selected for you are a cultivar called Tiara. And Tiara cabbages are a short season cabbage as well. Being they're a short season, they do give you a little bit smaller of a cabbage. These are what they call a fresh market or a fresh eating cabbage. They're not ones that you can store in your refrigerator for a long time, but they offer a good chance of getting a good crop because they're spending less time outside being exposed to insects and things like that find them tasty. And as the summer goes on, it gets hotter out and insects become more active. And if you can get your cabbages out of the garden before those insects become too active, you have a better chance of getting a better looking and better crop. So that's what we've included here for cabbages and onions. You will have 24 cabbage seeds, and you can see I've already lost 4 of them here. That's how easy they roll around. You will get 24 cabbage seeds, and you will get 36 onion seeds, and we'll talk about planting those here in a second. The last thing that you're going to receive in your kit from the library are 2 labeling popsicle sticks, and they won't be labeled for you. You'll have to write on them, but you can write on whatever you want. I wrote the cultivar and what they are. Onion or cabbage, and you can also put the the planting date on them as well. So those are the components of your kit, and we will be right back in a second and step 1 of where to start. So here we are, back at the table here. We're going to take away our bag the kit came into. And so here we are. We have our netted flat here on the base, and we're going to set our plug tray right in there, and we're just going to take our soil here, our potting mix rather, and we're going to dump it in there. Now I do want to say that this potting mix came from the library with a decent amount of moisture in it. If I know that there are different bags of this, and one of them might be drier than the other. So if this material is dry, like a piece of paper would be dry, there's a good chance that it's not going to accept water right away, and you'll have to soak it in some water. And so you can fix that problem by adding in a 1/4 to 3/4 cup of water, somewhere between there, to get it moistened up, so that, and you just have to let it sit there. So I would recommend overnight. So dumping your water in there, shaking it up inside the bag, and then letting it sit overnight, and then eventually the rest of the bag will all turn out moist. And this is great because when you end up tucking your seeds into bed or into their little cells there, this material will accept the water a lot better, being it's moist as opposed to dry. Otherwise, the water will just bubble up on top, and you won't get the water to sink down into your seeds very well. So that would be my recommendation for that. But just to start out, all you have to do is take your soil here and dump it into the tray. And I'm doing this one-handed here, so I'm going to try my best at making this look skilled. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, and there's a little extra that fell out, and that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take all this extra material that fell out here, And we're going to collect it and sprinkle it back on top once again. So we're going to just fill in any low spots on there. And then what we're going to do here is do a decent job of tamping this down just a little bit so that this, so that way when we get watering and things like that, the cell isn't just half full once we get halfway through the growing season here of growing them in the house. So now that we've got this filled up here with soil, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select which half of our tray is going to be onions and which is going to be cabbages. So I'm going to put the onions in this side here, right there. And we're going to choose half of the other flat to be cabbage. So like I said, we have included 24 cabbage seeds here. And we're going to seed 2 seeds in each one of these cells here for our cabbages. So I'm going to take these out here. I'm going to put these on the table. And what we're also going to do here is, just for ease, we're going to take our little stake out here and we're going to make a little hole in each one of these cells here that's between 1/2 and 1/4 inches deep. So you can see that there. Go down about 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch deep. Just make real light little holes in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our little itty bitty cabbage seeds here. And this is the fun part, if you have kids that are helping out, is you just take these little seeds here, you put 2 in each hole. And then from there, you just take your little stick here and you tamp it shut just like that. And then once we're done with that, what we're going to do is we're going to come in with our fingers and tamp it down just a little bit more to make sure that that seed's really nicely tucked in there. We don't want to squeeze it down in there, but we just want to tuck it in there really nicely. I'm going to plant 2 more seeds here into the next cell. And then we're going to take our stick and cover that up just like that. And then we're going to take our finger and tamp it down. So what this tamping is gaining us here is we're tucking that or compressing that soil there just a little bit around that seed so that it can come in contact with that soil. And when we water it, that soil will then be absorbed into that soil will give that seed the water it needs to absorb to grow. So I'm going to finish planting the cabbages here and we'll be right back. Here we are, and we're going to move on with the onions. So what we're going to do is I open the onion packet here, and we're going to dump our onion seeds right here on the table. And sorry I have a black table here, it's just what I got. So you should have 36 onion seeds, and we're going to plant 3 seeds in each cell. And so this is the same process as planting our cabbages here. Is we're just going to go in here and make a small little divot in there with I'm going to take out this piece of debris there. Sometimes that comes in potting mix. We're going to make ourselves some little holes there. This is a nice couple little dibbled holes, and we're going to take 3 of those seeds there and dump them in there. There's 1. 3. There we go. And so here we are with the stick. We're going to just tamp that shut a little bit there. And then we're going to come in with our fingers here. And tamp that shut there. And we're just going to repeat that same process on this half of the flat for our onions. I've completed the planting of the Patterson onions here, and we've completed the planting of all of our individual cells on this plug flat. Our next step is going to be to water. Now you can just take a little like Dixie cup or something like that and just water each one of these cells here. That's the nice thing is that once you get these packed down just a little bit, there'll be a little bit of a lip here that'll serve as a dam, and you can put just a little bit of water in here. And for the first watering after we seed our little seedlings is I'm going to use a spray bottle. I grow a lot of transplants myself, and so this is just something that I've had, and this works out really well. You can also use just a little pump hand sprayer, whatever works. This is what I use. And so in trying to water your seedlings for the first time, I'm just going to demonstrate here on this cell here. You're going to want to give them a real soaking drench. And you're aiming for getting some of the water to come out the bottom of the cell. If we hadn't gone through, you might remember I talked about moistening up this potting mix prior to planting it. If we hadn't done that, this potting mix here would respond really well to static electricity. It would stick to my hands and things like that just because it's so dry. And when it's in that state, and you were to put water on this material, it would bubble up just like it's doing on the plastic itself. So the plastic repels water, and you can see that there, it just bubbles up, and that same thing would also happen in these cells too if this wasn't properly moistened prior to starting. So when I gotten this from the library, it was at a perfect moisture consistency to where we didn't have to worry about that, and I hope that yours is in the same order as well. So we're continuing to go ahead and giving these a soaking drench. Now, if you were using a Dixie cup, it's obviously going to fill that cell really fast, and the water's not going to fall down or be absorbed into that potting mix as fast, and that's okay. You just have to come back with multiple little doses to make sure that we water it, and we'll see here in just a second. The water will then come out the bottom of the individual plug flat here. So we're just trying to do that just a little bit longer here, and we'll hopefully see. Oh, there we are. We have the water coming out the bottom of the plug flat. And so at this point is where we can stop watering and we can move on to our next step. I'm going to finish watering this tray, and then we'll come back to where we're going from here. We've completed watering our seeds. And now we're going to move on to putting our seeds out in an optimal location for growing. So right now we are sitting in front of a south-facing window, and I apologize, my window's a little dirty. We're in the process of renovating the house, and I guess there's a point in time where it's just not going to look pretty. But anyway, putting these seeds here out in front of a south-facing window is very critical at this point in the season. An east or west-facing window does receive some direct sunlight, but not near as much as what this south-facing window would receive. So, south-facing window is required for starting your seeds, and the north-facing window, it just doesn't get any direct sun at all. So that is just not even an option if you were to ask me. But anyway, that would be the next thing to do, and just water your seeds every 3 or 4 days, or whenever the potting mix here seems to dry out a little bit. So as the plants grow a little bit more, their water demand will increase, and you'll end up watering them a little bit more often. Something else that you might be able or might have at your house is a supplemental light. This is a double tube fluorescent light here, and I'm going to go underneath here so you can kind of see what's going on. We have 2 fluorescent bulbs there, and you can add some fluorescent light or some supplemental lighting to your south-facing window light as an option. It does help a little bit. It's not required. You can get just fine results putting your onions and cabbages out in the window at this stage. So they might not be as big when you plant them out in the garden, but they're still going to be wonderful. 2 weeks from now, when you have your cabbages, so here we have our cabbages on the left-hand side here, they will start to sprout. And at that time, when you see everything sprouting and coming up and nothing more emerging, it's time to go through and thin the transplants. So we've planted 2 cabbage seeds in each individual cell here. And hopefully you'll have doubles in every one if you have a perfect germination. But as we all know, some seeds are going to be not viable, and we're not going to get them to germinate. And so, to avoid having a blank cell, we plant 2 in there because seeds are much cheaper to buy as opposed to, and they go a lot further as opposed to this potting mix or the trays. So we view this as valuable real estate, and we don't want to waste it. And so doubling up our seeds and then thinning them out as a practice that that you can do as a home grower to reduce the cost of having blank space in there. A lot of commercial, industrial transplant growers actually do this process as well of overseeding and then thinning out. So that's with the cabbages. So once they sprout in about 2 weeks, it'll be a time to go in and thin them out. I would choose the smallest one and pull that one out, or the least healthy looking one, and pull that one out and leave the better looking one. Now on the right here we have our onions. And it is up to you as to whether you want to thin them out. If you remember, we planted 3 seeds in each individual cell. And onions are much more willing to share their space with their neighbors, unlike cabbages. And so if you want to leave them together in a trio of 3 in each one of these cells, that is perfectly okay. The only disadvantage is that your onions won't come out as round. They might be a little lopsided, or they might have a flat side to them. But that's okay. On the bright side, when you want to chop them up on the chopping board, they won't roll around near as easy. So that's always a joke we say when we plant our onions together, is that you'll just have cutting board onions. But anyway, yeah, you can leave your onions together, or you can separate them out, or not separate them out, I'm sorry, or you can thin them out. And if you want perfectly round onions, you just simply pull out the 2 of the 3 onions in each cell so that you have 1 onion in each cell. So from here, going forward, in about a month is when you're going to want to take these and transplant these out into the garden. So right now, this is April 3rd right now. And in about May 15th is when you're going to want to plant these out in the garden. The danger of frost will pretty much be passed by then. And so that's kind of a target date to keep in mind as to when you're going to want to plant these outside. Prior to planting them outside, you're going to want to do a process of hardening them off. And hardening off starts when you just take this whole flat here, which is why this net flat is included with the tray of plugs here. And take these outside and stick them underneath of a shade tree. And gradually every day, bring them out from underneath that shade tree until about on the 5th or 7th day, they end up in full sun. And so when they end up in full sun on the 5th or 7th day, that's when they're ready to be transplanted out in the garden, and they're what we call hardened off so that they can deal with the elements that they're going to have. Because if you think about it, inside of a house on a south-facing window, they get sunshine, they don't have any winds, they don't have any driving rains, they don't have any flooding, they don't have anything like that. And so by hardening them off, we basically kind of just introduce them to the elements. Just a point of caution, if things happen to get really cold at night, close to freezing, it might be a good idea, at least in the first couple nights, to bring those plants in. But by the time your plants are hardened off on the 7th day, especially at the 15th of May, you shouldn't worry about bringing them inside. They're going to deal with pretty much anything that you throw at them once they're done being hardened off in our climate here. So planting the cabbages in the garden, you're going to want to space them apart at about 12 to 18 inches based on whatever your available spaces in the garden. For onions, you're going to want to go about seed each one of these plugs about 6 inches apart. So you can start harvesting your onions when they're about golf ball size. They will reach a full size of about a tennis ball when they're done. So yeah, you can gradually start eating them as a fresh vegetable. You don't have to wait until they're to a full size and then eat them. You can gradually start eating them once they've reached golf ball size. And the same goes for the cabbages as well. When the cabbages reach something like a tennis ball or a baseball, you can start eating them, and their full size will be a large, oversized softball. So with that, that's about it for how to start these transplants indoors. I hope that you have a great 2020 growing season experimenting with this, and special thanks to the James Kennedy Public Library in Dyersville for hosting this program and making it virtual for you at home to experience, because this is a really important thing that we should all be able to experience in our life, is growing some plants and the pride that you get in taking care of something. I'm Ray Kruse from the Dubuque County Extension Office, your Food Systems Program Coordinator, and I'm just going to wrap it up and say thanks again for joining us, and you have a great 2020 growing season. Bye-bye.